Welcome to Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. On Stageworthy, I interview people who make theater, actors, directors, playwrights, and more, and talk to them about everything from why they chose the theater to their work process and anything in between. This is episode 17, and my guest is Jessie Award-winning singer, actor, teacher, and producer Alison MacDonald. You can find Stageworthy on Facebook and Twitter at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. If you like what you hear, I hope you'll subscribe on iTunes or Google Music or whatever podcast app you use, and consider leaving a comment or rating. All right, and let's just jump in.
Okay.
So here's a question that I didn't ask you, and that's why theater for you?
Why theater?
Yeah.
That's a big question. I think I've always, like when I was a kid, I was that kid who would just always be acting things out and doing little song and dance numbers. And like in high school, I didn't think I could do it as a career until grade 12. And then I had a really great drama teacher, and that it's something that you love to do so much. I was like, I might as well give it a shot. I just had good people in my life in my teen years that really supported me and guided me in this direction, I think. And then it's that thing, once you start doing it, it's like you can't get away from it.
So you were always putting on shows and things, but when did you discover what theater was? Like, did you always just you always wanted to put on a show, or?
I think I started with music and singing. And then it was grade 5. Grade 5. I had just our regular teacher, like she, in grade 5, they teach you everything. And she brought drama into our classroom, and we put on plays. And I remember there was about 5 plays, and so everyone got cast in the shows, and the part that she cast me in was this damsel in distress. And I remember telling her, I don't want to play this damsel in distress, I want like a strong character. So then I ended up getting cast in another play where I played this evil innkeeper, and I wore my dad's suit, and I wore like a fake mustache, and that might be my first like actual recollection of theater.
Had you seen any plays or anything like that before that, or was it just like it came into the classroom?
I don't remember a lot of plays when I was a kid, like in elementary school. I remember there was one show I remember that came to our school was it was like anti-smoking show, and they did stuff with black lights and puppets. I remember thinking, wow, this is the coolest. But as an adult, I just remember the visuals of it, but being like, this is pretty awesome that these people are here doing this at our school.
Did so music was the entry point for you?
Yeah. I remember doing that show in grade 5 in my classroom, but I was always singing and wanting to take voice lessons. So I think that's where I realized how much I enjoyed connecting to music and the stories in a song. I guess I did. Yeah, I did more plays in junior high and stuff, but it was really the music that captivated me. I would sing all the time around my house constantly. So, yeah.
Do you know when the two sort of came together for you?
Probably it would have been in junior high. Yeah. Cause again, in school, just like the cool drama teachers we had, they put on musicals. And so I just remember we did a production of The Little Mermaid. I don't think it was licensed or authorized at the time, but yeah, the idea of getting to act and sing at the same time was, it was just so cool getting to connect to a character that way, and having something behind the music and the melody that you may be singing.
You were saying that you had people who sort of like convinced you or taught you that you could make a career out of this. And that was when you started to realize that, did you decide, were you like, I'm just going to go out and make it? Or did you think about, or did people guide you towards a theater school or anything like that?
I'm trying to think. Well, I have to say, like when I went to theater school, like I grew up in central Alberta for the most part. So I went to high school in Red Deer, and I had done like a youth summer theater camp after grade 10. And the guy who ran that used to run the theater program at the college. So I remember he called me up and was like, when I was in grade 12, like basically saying, just checking to make sure you're auditioning for the program. And I remember getting that phone call, just being like, oh, maybe I should do this. Like I didn't, because I always really liked math and sciences, and I was thinking about auditioning for the program, but the little gremlins in your voice are always like, oh, you're not good enough, you can't do it. Like those things always seem to be louder than your champions outside of your head. But I remember getting that phone call and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this audition. And then it made sense because the school was a great program, and it was where I was living at the time, so I could live at home and do that drama program. And I think even after finishing Red Deer College, I still wasn't like, I can do this for a living. I was still just like, I really enjoy it, and I'm young, so I'll keep trying at it. And then I went to CCPA in Victoria, which Canadian College of Performing Arts, and did training there. And still in my brain, I was like, well, I can't make a living at this. That's crazy. And then it just kind of like little projects just kept coming. A few years after I went to CCPA, I went to Chemainus Theatre Festival. They used to do this year-long apprenticeship program where you'd work in the offices, and then you'd work up in the dining room, and then you'd be in their shows. And so you'd be an actor, but then also be doing a whole bunch of other jobs around the theater. And I remember our stage manager, the first show I was doing, she was talking to me, and then she's like, well, when you become equity, and I remember being like, what are you talking about? I can't do this for a living. What do you mean when I become equity? Like it was still such a foreign idea to be doing it as a career. Even though I loved it, I was still like, oh, how do I do this? And I think it was apprenticing in Chemainus, that because we were, like, I was in my early 20s and working with people in their, anywhere from their 30s to their 50s or 60s, and seeing that people do it and still have the love for it when they are in their 70s, So
it's interesting how you spent so long, and almost from the start, it seems like telling you, well, it's just the thing I'm going to do because it's fun. And you had that voice that was like, I'm not good enough to do this for a living.
Yeah.
It's funny how, and I mean, you know what? I think that everybody who does theater combats that in some way.
For sure.
Like, in a way, we're all, I mean, it's crazy that we would think that we would do this for a living.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, if we were completely sane, for want of a better word, we would do what our parents told us, and, learn about computer programming, or do a thing and sit and get a job and sort of do that little theater thing that you like to do on the side, but we were driven to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you've kind of been going like almost nonstop from project to project, isn't that right?
Yeah. Some years are there's less stops at some years, and then other years there's longer pauses. But yeah, it seems to be. I feel like those little voices always come in your head, come back, being like, I can't do this. What are you doing? And I feel like whenever that voice comes back, the passion and the joy for theater is always stronger than the voice. It always, it's like everyone calls it the theater bug, right? It's just like you've been bit and you're stuck with this lot. Thankfully,
Yeah. So you went from Red Deer to the West Coast.
Yeah.
And then what was your journey to get to Toronto?
Well, okay. I feel like I've just lived everywhere. So I was in Red Deer, and then I went to school in Victoria, and then I actually moved back to Alberta for a little bit, and then I did a little dinner theater tour. It was in Winnipeg and Edmonton. And then I was back on the West Coast, and that's when I was in Chemainus and did an apprenticeship, and I always had the intention of moving back to Alberta, and then I just met people in a show I was doing. I was like, heck, I'm gonna move to Vancouver. That seems like a smart thing to do. So I moved to Vancouver and ended up working with some lovely people and great companies and doing great projects there, and was there for about 7 years. And then I always kind of blame my parents for this. My dad was in the military, so we moved around a lot, like every 3 or 4 years. Blame/thank them for it. So it's if I'm in a place longer than 4 years, I start to get antsy, just because that's how I just moved around so much growing up. So at the 7-year mark in Vancouver, I was like, oh my goodness, I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere in my entire life. I gotta shake it up. So just made sense. Like the next, the big theater center of Canada is Toronto. So a good friend of mine and myself, we decided, we're like, let's just do it. So we moved out to Toronto, and I remember thinking, okay, there's a good shot I will never work again by again, the little voice in your head being like,
of course, yeah.
You were good enough for the West Coast, but will you be good enough for Ontario? So I moved there and did auditions, and ended up getting a job out in Gananoque at Thousand Islands Playhouse, and stayed in Toronto for 5 years. And then the little like moving itch kind of came back, and decided to truck it back to Alberta and just be close to my folks for a little bit.
It's funny that moving itch. I used to have the same thing, just in terms of like the apartment that I would live in.
Mm-hmm.
After like a year, 2 years in an apartment, I'd sort of start like going like apartment hunting for no particular reason.
Yeah.
So I sort of get like how you get into that habit of like, or that need to move. It sounds like for the last couple of places you've been there longer than 3 years, so you're sort of getting used to at least settling down for a short while.
Mm-hmm. And it's not that I don't like or haven't enjoyed any of the cities I've lived in. It's just I guess I do like change. Like I battle change, but then I also like the challenge of it, if that makes sense. Because I find you end up seeing parts of yourself that that you may not have noticed, like when you shake things up quite a bit,
Well, I mean, when you go to a new place, you're leaving like everything that you know, so you are literally out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're about as far from your comfort zone as you can get, because you have to go from knowing the people that you know and knowing the place that you're in to knowing nothing about a place.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then you just kind of rely on like the small connections you may have made before you got there. And the great thing is now I feel like I've got connections and really good friends and companies that I've worked for all across Canada now. And I feel if when I go to Toronto, there's folks I can see and like little projects that I can work on while I'm there, even if it's a vacation, or same with Vancouver. Like going back there is always, going to any of the places that I've lived now feels like coming home in a sense.
Mm-hmm. You've had, since you left Toronto, you've had one of those nonstop working years, from what I can tell. You and I worked together with Keystone Theatre doing Springworks. We're doing The Last Man on Earth in Springworks in Stratford, Ontario, and you basically, when we finished, you basically were like leaving.
It was a bit crazy. I remember, we finished, and then I was packing up my apartment, and then I went to Gananoque and did a production of Pirates of Penzance for a chunk of the summer, and sang some crazy soprano stuff, which was awesome. And then I went down. I went down to Texas. I have a friend who lives down there, and I took this music course, Music Together. It's about teaching music to young kids, like 0 to 5 years old. So I went down and took that for a couple of weeks, and then came back up to Canada. Started. But it's funny because I think in my head, I'm like, gosh, I haven't done anything this year. And then when I say it out loud, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been busy, right? It's funny how our brain plays tricks on us.
No, it's true.
Yeah, it's funny. It's making me giggle a little bit. Yeah, so when I came back up to Canada, to Alberta, I started working on a CD of 1950s and 60s songs with a friend, just cover songs, and worked on that. And then I went to Chemainus Theatre Festival, and did a production of Elf, the musical, where I played Jovi, which was very fun. I got to play an elf too. I played Shawanda the elf.
I'm not familiar with Shawanda the elf.
No, she's just an elf she's just a funny elf, and her name was Shawanda.
I knew that there's a musical called Elf. Like I saw it on like an advertisement for it online or something.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not well known. Did you have any expectation going into that?
Well, it's a fairly new musical, and I had listened, like I was familiar with some of the songs, and I was familiar with like the songs that Jovi sang. But funny enough, I had never seen, this is terrible, but I'd never seen the movie all the way through. Like I'd watched clips of it, but I'd never watched it from beginning to end. So then when I was
I'm going to let you off the hook there, because up until like 3 years ago, I had not seen it.
Okay, I don't feel so bad.
So don't feel bad. Don't feel bad.
So yeah. And then it was a matter of like when I got cast, I was like, well, I'm not going to watch the movie because then I'll just see Zooey Deschanel in my head. And but so like I was familiar, not even super familiar, but I knew some of the songs, and I knew they were catchy tunes. But then actually working on the show, it was so great. And and then I finally watched the movie, and it's just such a charming story. And it's quite different from the movie, but you still get the essence of this giant elf discovering who he is and trying to find a home in the real world. And yeah, it's pretty great.
How long did that run for?
We started rehearsals. I feel like I've celebrated Christmas for like 3 months. We started rehearsals. Seriously. We started October 26th, and then we closed December 31st. And then I ended up celebrating Christmas with my family after the contract. So I was like, gosh, it's Christmas all the time.
That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And where after Elf,
sorry, after Elf, I came back to Alberta, and then finished stuff on the CD with my friend, just doing like mixing and getting it sent out to get mastered, and a whole bunch of stuff I don't know. I think I had a little clue, but I really didn't have a clue how much work goes into putting a project like that together. So it was huge learning curve. And I'm sure, well, there were tears, numerous stress tears were had. Got that done. And then I started in Kamloops at Western Canada Theatre, a production of A Closer Walk with Patsy Cline, where I played Patsy Cline. Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
For your CD, is there any particular, like, you were doing these 50s songs. Did you choose them for any particular reason?
Well, originally it was I just thought it would be fun to make an album, and I'm always like, I'll write some songs, and then I never get, like, I just haven't had the creative juices flowing to write songs. So I was like, all right, well, what kind of music do I like? And I've always liked 1950s and 60s songs. And when I got cast in A Closer Walk with Patsy Cline, I was like, maybe it'd be smart to sell CDs in the lobby afterwards. Just, I don't know, give myself a challenge, a project, and then something to show for it afterwards. So I'd sung, I put a number of Patsy Cline songs on there, because I'd be selling them after the show. And then I've done other jukebox musicals that have 1950s and 60s songs. So I put One Fine Day on the album because it used to be my go-to, like, 1950s pop song audition song. So I was like, well, I like the song, let's stick it on. And it's been good luck. So another song, a good friend of mine, she sang it in a show, and I always loved her rendition of it. And so it was kind of like a little tribute to her. It was Where the Boys Are. And another, they all have like there's a song, If I Give My Heart to You. I did a show about Lucille Starr, who was a Canadian country singer. In the 50s and 60s, and that was one of the songs in the show. So each of the songs on the CD have, like, I have a connection to it in some way. Most people haven't really asked that, though.
Well, I thought, I mean, if you're putting together an album like a CD, and you obviously you haven't done that before.
No.
You must choose the songs for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And what was like? How long did it take you to record it, as opposed to just like the master? Like, how long were you in the studio itself for?
Well, not like we had limited time. Like, it was always like my friend had, 3 hours one night when I could come over. So, I mean, recording, and we recorded the vocal track, and then we, spiced up the backings, but I don't know, maybe 10 hours of just recording. But then within that, we were also mixing at the same time. But I mean, studio time with everything, maybe 20 hours with the mixing and musicians coming in. But it was definitely spaced out over like a couple of months of like, this weekend I'll come over, or this weekend we'll do it. So, I didn't track it necessarily, but I don't think it was, my friend may beg to differ. He probably spent way more time after I left fixing things up. He'd probably be like, Alison, it was 40 hours. What are you talking about? 20.
Yeah. And now we've talked a lot about your singing, your acting, and things like that. But like I mentioned, when we met, you joined us to do The Last Man on Earth, which is a play in the style of a silent film, which has no spoken words.
Yes.
So because I don't actually know the backstory for how you came to join us, and even how you felt about doing a show where this tool that you've used for so many years you didn't get to use.
Yeah. So what's the question? Sorry.
First off, what's the story behind how you came to join us?
Oh, so one of Jeanette, who was the director and like co-creator of the show, I had auditioned for her for a few months prior to that, and had worked with her. After auditioning for her, I worked with her a few times and did some workshops, and then we ended up having like a jam, like 4 of us who would get together, and we would jam in a rehearsal space and just improv stuff, and each bring in different ideas. And a lot of it, there was a lot of physical theater aspect of it. And so I think it was just working with Jeanette in that capacity. And then Dana wasn't able to reprise her role at Springwork. So then Jeanette was like, just called me up and checked to see if I was available and if I was interested. And I definitely was. So that's how I came to be a part of the show. I do. Yeah, because most of my experience has been in singing and talking.
Yeah.
My family would definitely they'll be like, all you do is talk, Alison. But yeah, my last year in Toronto when I was working with Jeanette and a few of the smaller projects was a bit more physical theater, and I really enjoyed it. And I grew up figure skating too, so I felt like in a sense, it was kind of connecting back to storytelling that I would do in skating, right? Like you express through using your body, and like essentially we're all telling stories, right? It's just finding the different way of getting the message across. So, I was always very appreciative and thankful that Jeanette kind of guided me in that direction, or saw like, hey, you've got a good feel for this. So it was nice being able to explore that and come onto the show and be a part of the team.
Did you find it difficult to sort of like drop the, be unable to speak and yet still tell a story? Did you struggle with that?
I struggled. It was not being able to speak was okay, but sound effects, actually, because I like in life, I make a lot of sound effects, and I mean a lot of training and voice work. It's all like saying how connected the voice is to your intention and the movement, and so I would find myself like almost making a sound effect and being like, no, it's silent, Alison. So, but I remember Jeanette talking in rehearsal about how you can use the breath, and that really helped because, I think there was a point where the silence, I tried to just like stop breathing, which is not good in any situation. So yeah, it was, like it wasn't frustrating, but it was interesting. But just experiencing it, being like, okay, how do I rechannel this vocalization that I want to create? And I mean, I don't think I actually thought about it at the time. It wasn't my brain being like, oh, how do I not talk now? But thinking back on it, that is kind of what was happening. Of how do you keep all the energy that you have, but just place it in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you I mean, as somebody who had not, like, as people who'd worked in that style for a while, we all like come into it and sort of just know it. Mm-hmm. Aside from just the not speaking, was it difficult to sort of come across and like do the silent, quote unquote, silent film thing, which is sort of like its own thing?
It was, I think, like, honestly, it was most of it, like, it was just more fun than anything. Like, it felt like I was getting to go out on the playground and play with everyone. And I mean, there was moments where, because I was the one who didn't necessarily know what was supposed to be happening in some moments, like I would get frustrated because I'm like, I don't know how to do what I'm supposed to do right now, because you're stepping in to someone else's work, right?
Else's role, yeah.
So you want to be truthful to what they've created, because that's how the show exists, is with that the character that the original person created. So you want to fit into that, but then also understanding that we are different people and trying to find the balance within that. And I think there was, some days are easier than others, and some moments are easier than others. I think it was a good lesson for me, of just being kind to yourself, and not letting the little gremlin in your head be like, you're not good enough, because I mean, we're all there to have a good time and do the work and tell the story, and
Yeah. So right now, are you still in Alberta? Are you in Red Deer? Are you Edmonton, Calgary? Where are you at?
Well, right now I'm in Edmonton, but I'm going to be in Red Deer tonight, and then Calgary tomorrow.
Well, okay. What are you doing?
Well, these aren't interesting things. Right now I'm going to be,
okay.
It's just like Joe job kind of stuff. So I'm kind of going back and forth, and, but what's interesting? I'm going to be going to Kamloops in a few weeks, trying to put together a little demo for singing at wineries in the Okanagan for the summer.
Oh, okay. So tell me about that.
You're like, well, that's out of left field.
That's sure. What's going on with that?
It's so when I was working on Patsy Cline in Kamloops, basically, like they had a band from Kamloops who was the band for the show, and it was just pretty awesome. I felt like I was like, wow, I'm actually a singer in a band. This is awesome. So I was chatting with some of the musicians, and I have a friend who lives up in the Okanagan. We were just talking about wineries, and they have all these bistros and a lot of live music in the summertime. So one of the musicians and I are going to like form like a little duo, or just at least try and get some summer gigs and drink wine and play music.
Well, sure. Well, sure. Why not?
Yeah.
Is that your summer plan? Do you have any shows lined up, or is it just whatever comes your way sort of thing?
For the summer, I'm going to be back in the Patsy Cline show goes to Gananoque. So I'll be there mid-May to mid-June. Nice. And then I'll be in Toronto after doing a Kids Fringe show there. Nice. Yeah. And then, so this is just the winery. I was like, maybe it'd be great to, this is a pipe dream right now. Just so you know, the winery is like, hopefully maybe I could get some gigs July and August. Yeah.
I was actually thinking earlier about how your experience when you were younger in a military family, moving from place to place, sort of prepared you for the nomadic life that an actor's life can be. Mm-hmm. You seem to be very, very at home with like picking up and moving from one place to another.
I go through phases of being okay with it. Sometimes I think I sound cool, but I'm really not this cool. But yeah, you get used to. I think there's a comfort in the moving around. Like once that becomes the norm, like it starts to feel a bit stable, because you're like, oh, this is what I'm used to. I'm used to moving around, and right now I think I'm in that place where I'm like, oh, I'm used to having my suitcase and being able to pack for a week at a time and go from here to here to here. And I mean, I don't know how long that can last. I think I would burn out doing that all the time, but right now it's exciting. I like it. And you get to see so many places and visit so many great people and artists and reconnect with people that I haven't seen in a chunk of time. So, yeah. But it definitely, I go through phases of sometimes I'm like, this is the best. And other times I'm like, what the heck am I doing? But you ride the ride, right?
Well, you have to just go. You have to roll with it as best you can.
Mm-hmm. And I think as long as it's like you trust your gut, I'm like, this feels good right now, and I'm enjoying it. And I think with anything, as soon as you stop enjoying it, then stop. Like find a way to enjoy it again, you know?
Well, burnout is a real danger for people who spend, in some cases, every waking hour doing this thing, like going from like this little gig to this little gig to this little gig to and they just keep going and going, and burnout is a very real thing, and it can really, it can ruin you on the performing arts sometimes.
And I think that oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like moving back to Alberta, I think it was a bit of a burnout. Well, like it was starting to feel that coming on, because a lot of times if I would have time off, I would be like, oh, I want to go home and visit my family. And that's where I was wanting to spend my downtime, was back here and visiting my folks and my sister. And but my brain was kind of like, wait a second, maybe if that's where you want your downtime to be, you should
be closer,
make that happen. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. You were talking earlier about, how you thought that you would write music for your album when you finally did it. Is writing a thing that you do or that you want to do?
I do want to do it. Yeah. I'm more just kind of journaling now. And I'm really interested in TYA and like theater for young people and stories for children. Yeah, I think with the album, just getting it done, I was like, sometimes, I don't know if you feel this way. Sometimes it's just like, you just got to do it. And like, I was like, okay, if I just do this, if I know I can get it done, without writing music, then I know if I wrote music, then I could also create an album. So, I do have a friend, we both have talked about children's music and creating, like a children's album at some point. So, that's definitely on a little back burner. And yeah, creating like one person cabaret shows I'm always interested in, like maybe not necessarily writing the music for them, but creating a through line in the story and picking the songs that fit the theme and the message you're trying to get across always interests me. It's just finding the time.
Is that something you've done before? Is this something like a cabaret? Is that something you've done before, or something that you want to do?
I've done small cabarets. They haven't been like they're cabarets, but I haven't like super, this isn't a great sentence, super stuck to a theme. Yeah, I want to write. But I would love to actually pick a theme and create like a nice through line for a cabaret where, yeah, I've done a lot more casual style cabarets that feel more like a concert, but I'd like to have one that is just more solid in its story and theme.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's funny because you were talking about just doing it earlier, and I kind of feel like sometimes you just have to put yourself in a position where you have to do the thing.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, like I'm doing a one man show in Hamilton Fringe this year, and like I decided that I was going to do it because I had to do it. Like I've had this thing on the back burner for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And it was like, if I don't put myself in a position to do this, I'm just never going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. You just have to buckle down and get, I also think it's helpful to have like people around who you're accountable to. So it's like, you've told someone you're going to do it, and then they're like, all right, I'm going to like either help you or make sure you do it. Like,
or they ask you about it later. So that thing that you mentioned that you were going to do, how's that going?
Yeah. And you're like, it's going great. Or, oh no.
Oh, yeah. You mean that thing that I did? Yeah. Do you have ideas for what you want to do? Is it like your through line cabaret, or are you just sort of like, it's a thing that you want to do one day?
For the cabaret, I mean, there's like always, I guess sometimes I just have I have too many ideas. That sounds ridiculous.
You know what? No, it does not sound ridiculous, because I know lots of people, and it's sort of like a thing that I do, and that I know a lot of people do, is I have like an idea file. Yeah. I just put something away in the idea file. And then when you have some time to go to it, you can pull it out of the idea file and say, can I make something out of this? Or do I need to just put it back? And it can be good to have too many ideas.
Yeah. I think, yeah. One main theme is the idea of coming home. And I guess just because that's also close to me right now, and just what home and family and history within your family, what that all means, and how it creates the person that you are, right? Or how much of it creates the person that you are, and how much of you is, past your family or past your history or your where you came from. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
So yeah, that's kind of a theme that's been sticking with me. And, whenever I have if I'm at a concert and I'm hearing a song, or different moments that I've experienced lately, I'm always like, I kind of like clock it in my brain or put it in my little idea file in my phone where I'm like, oh, this would be good for this cabaret or theme, or, story night, whatever you can label it. It seems weird labeling it, but
you have to call it something.
Yeah.
Do you ever sort of sit back and sort of think about what you thought this journey would be when you were younger, and sort of like thinking about doing it, and what you've made it into now?
Yeah. I mean, I often think back to that, like the little story of like being in Chemainus and the person being like, well, when you're equity, and like, it wasn't just the equity thing that I was like, that's crazy. Like, I really did think, oh, I'm just doing this right now just for a little bit. And it's not because I wasn't passionate about it, but yeah, just that I Yeah, I didn't think
You kind of didn't believe that. Yeah.
that I could do it. Right. And
Yeah.
It's interesting to think back of like the experiences and, you know, the shows and the stories you've told and the people that I've met and that I think through, like, it's interesting to see what I've learned or, you know, what I love. And it's neat to look back and it's like the stuff that I really love is like working with good people. And that's what keeps you going. It's like,
Yeah.
I feel like anytime that, you know, burnout kicks in or you're like, what am I doing? It's usually a contract where you're working with like superb people that, like the work is great, but it's also like just being with good artists is so rewarding. And also I think back to, you know, when I was in my early 20s and how afraid I was of messing up and making mistakes and not getting it right. And I mean, that still plays a part in my, you know, in my process in my brain, but like I'm able to see it a lot more now. Like when it starts to come in to go, wait a second, that's not helpful. Like if you're terrible, you're terrible. If you're terrible, you're terrible. Like all you can do is your best and like put the work in. And that's, yeah, it's interesting for me to think back over like the 15 years and go, oh, you know, to be in my 30s and be like, that's what I've learned. Don't be afraid. If you're terrible, you're terrible. But it's really freeing. It's incredibly freeing to be like, well, no one's going to die if you hit a bad note on stage or like doesn't make me a terrible person if I'm not the best at this scene. But it feels terrible to not give it your all. Right. So it's better to give it your all and fall on your face than shy away from it.
Do you remember which show you got your equity card on?
My equity card.
Like
what did I get?
Do you remember?
It would have. I'm trying to think. It would have been. I think it was Suds. I was doing this touring production of Suds, the rockin' 1960s soap opera musical.
I just have to say the fact that you had to sit back and think, what was that I got that? It sort of just says that, you know, you probably work a lot more than you think you have if you look back at it.
I guess, hey? Yeah. I feel like I've had some really great experiences and great contracts and
I think, you know, I was thinking about what you were saying about surrounding yourself with good people. And I think that as artists, it's so important for us to make sure that we have other creative people around us, not necessarily all of them actors, but just to keep the creative people around because we challenge each other.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of like being around creative people makes you creative.
Yes. And I think I was talking about this with my friend the other day about like keeping the creative people close to you and also like the champions of your work close to you. And then she said something about the crazies, like keep the crazies away. And by crazies, like she meant like the naysayers and the negative Nancys who are like, you can't do that. And and how I think it is important to like keep your creative bubble. It's a sacred space. And as soon as like somebody comes in, like tapping on it, being like trying to pop it, like you gotta make sure they like you make sure they stay away. 'Cause I feel like we do it enough to ourselves being like, this isn't going to work. So you don't need an outside person in your creative circle being that voice as well. So.
No, absolutely. Where can people find you online? Are you on Twitter? Do you have a website?
Yes, Phil, I do. my website is AlisonMacDonald.ca. It's kind of a work in progress right now, but I am out there. And then on Twitter, I am, what am I? This is Ali Mac. That's who I am. At This is Ali Mac.
Nice.
I'm new to Twitter, so.
Oh, how new to Twitter are you?
It sounds like a joke. How new to Twitter are you?
Yeah, no.
Pretty. I feel like I had a Twitter account and then I canceled it, and then I just got another one like a year ago, 6 months ago, something like that.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. No, that's pretty new.
Yeah.
Do you use it regularly, or is it still like one of those like I don't know what I'm doing?
Well, I post some things, but I don't really use it much. I'm like, the show is closing. Here's a picture.
Well, it's a start, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that a lot of actors haven't figured out how to social media. You know, like what are you supposed to do? What's it for as an actor?
Yeah. Well, and it feels like every time I put something on Facebook or, say something about a show closing, it feels, I mean, I guess it's a marketing tool, but it also feels, it just feels weird to me. But I get that it's
you're still in that. It feels like I'm bragging when I post something. Is that sort of like I'm saying, look at me, I'm doing awesome things.
I guess it's kind of yeah. And but then I think like, well, and I have friends who post things. I'm like, oh great, I want to know what they're up to. Yeah, I go through phases with Facebook. Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, let's put stuff, and then other times I'm like, no. But it is a marketing tool. But then it's also I
kind of feel like you have to look at it in that sort of like I'm sharing with my friends thing. And I think you have to do that with Facebook and with Twitter.
Yeah.
I mean, treat it like, you're sharing stuff, you're sharing what you're doing with your friends.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know any of the people who are following you on Twitter, I think it's a good idea to like talk as though they're your people.
Yeah.
I mean, they're following you for a reason, even if they might be spammers or like whatever. But like they're following you. The majority aren't. They want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Well, maybe.
Can people buy your CD online? I
don't have. They can order it, and I can mail them a CD. I'm very old school like that right now. I'm looking into getting it uploaded onto iTunes. But yeah, there's information on my website about ordering it. And then getting an actual old school CD in the mail.
Sweet. Yeah. Sweet. That's great. That's great. Well, we're kind of out of time here. So I want to thank you for joining me today. And thanks for the conversation.
Yeah. Thank you for asking me. This was fun. My brain was like, oh yeah, I get to, I don't know, talk about my hopes and dreams.